Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Today we have two guests on. One of them actually spent many years as a flight attendant, so knows all about travelling around, and that's pretty good because since meeting, they have travelled the world together, and that is something as parents, I think a lot of us think about travelling, but also think about how horrendous it would be to travel with kids. But these two do it. It's the Travelling Gays. Hi, Doug and Sanjay, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
How are you both? Very good. You're so on brand right now. You're away.
I know.
You're on holiday. You're travelling.
We are. I mean, it's not as often as it used to be, I've got to say. But yeah, we're in Tenerife.
Slight ulterior motive too. Granny's here. So
it is
a holiday within a holiday.
That's how you do it. I love that a lot. What were your childhoods like? Were they very different to each other?
Yeah, I think so. I'm
slightly older, but
just slightly,
just a bit. So I think
we're both born in the 80s.
See, Tom uses this against me. Right, okay. Tom uses this against me, but there's literally 6 months between us. So,
6 years between us. So
6 years.
Oh, okay.
On the cusp of being a millennial, Sanj tells me.
Yeah, he's just about a millennial.
I'm like, am I a millennial? He's like, of course, Dougie, of course.
I grew up in London, and I'm an only child. So, grew up in the city, and I guess had a lovely childhood. But I think very much sort of towards the later years of my childhood, getting to sort of 15, 16, that's when kind of realised I was gay, and that's when it became a bit more challenging, and spent a lot of time hiding who I was and a lot of energy kind of. I mean, when I was like 16 years old, I remember queuing outside. I mean, I know I probably shouldn't have been there when I was 16, but GAY on Old Compton Street, just like terrified that someone would see me waiting outside and clock me waiting outside that bar. But definitely a good city upbringing, but not one that I ever envisaged would end up later in life leading to me becoming a parent.
And Doug, how did yours compare?
I was going to say, we just said similar, but actually I'm from the Lake District, so I grew up, but then I'm one of 5.
Just in green.
Yeah, so exactly.
Oh, wow.
So then I guess for me, there was just 0 gay role models around, even on TV.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think it was it's hard to know if I even thought I was gay, or I don't know what I thought, but when I got the opportunity to leave the Lake District, I was out of that.
And you ran off to Tenerife?
I did run off to Tenerife, actually. After my A-levels, I booked a lad's holiday to Tenerife, and, well, I'd never even seen a vodka Red Bull before, so my mind was blown when I moved here, when I came here on holiday, so I actually went home.
That's so funny, because Sanjay's going off and drinking a GAY, and you've not even had a Red Bull.
I'm a very nice, sensible boy. And then, until I came here. We are in Tenerife right now again, but I then came here, and then I just saw this world, and I thought maybe I could go there. And I don't know why I chose here, because it's probably not the gay capital of the world, but I booked a one-way flight and came back, and I lived here for a couple of years. And then, eventually I moved back to Manchester, and that was where we actually met.
We met.
So 16.
Really?
Yeah.
Gay Pride, is that cliche?
Yeah, we met at Manchester Pride, like
2009.
15 years ago. I was living there and working there after I'd been at uni there, and Doug was also living there, and each of our best friends had met in Ibiza, and I was out with my best friend Jack, and he was like, "Oh, can we go to this house party? There's this guy there I really like," and so our friend Joelle's house, and lo and behold, Doug was there, and
it was love at first sight.
He wrote his phone number on my arm in a biro.
For me, it was for me. I'm not sure about Sanj. It took a while and a bit of my staff travel perks flying to like ease him in, you know.
You can take us where?
Exactly. Would you like a date in New York? Yes, that's achievable.
Because you're like Mr. Big. So you just go wherever.
Exactly.
And did you, when you first met, or even before meeting, did you ever think about having children and becoming dads?
thought about it, yeah, but I'd never, ever in my wildest imaginations believed it was something that was possible for me.
Do you think that's also because, we were talking about, being gay, but not actually having any role models and, knowing more about that? Do you think that's part of it? There are no gay role models and therefore there are no gay dads.
100%. Like when we were growing up, I think you had very, very limited LGBTQ plus representation on anywhere really. And you had a few people like, I don't know, Graham Norton was a bit of a staple. And I remember watching Queer as Folk when that came out. And there's a lot of them. When I moved to Manchester, I was like, I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. And it's like just a cliche, but I think there was never much representation of LGBTQ plus families at all. And I think just, we were coming out, both of us were educated during the time of Section 28, where it was completely illegal for teachers in schools to even talk about the fact that LGBTQ plus people exist. And I guess coming out of the 80s and everything that kind of happened in the 80s, like it was a really, I think at the time, obviously we weren't aware of all this broader political context, but then kind of as an adult, I can look back and think, we were really, the kind of attitudes of people as a whole, but also the representation that you see just did not exist. And I think that just meant that one of the things I remember when I realized that I was gay was thinking, oh, I'm never going to be able to have children. And that was something that I think a lot of people think and maybe still think. And now it's a lot better. And I think it's great that there is so much more representation. You've got social media, which you never had back then. There's loads of different families, all different kinds and all different backgrounds that you can see on social media and maybe think that makes it possible. Because I think people talk a lot about role models, but it's almost like possibility models. I'd love to, I've heard someone say that, I'd love to credit them. Someone said, I didn't come up with that. Someone else came up with that, but possibility models where actually you could possibly be like that. And I think that's amazing.
I have to say though, if I'd have not met Sanj, who like we said was a bit younger, I think I'd almost just been like, it's not a possibility. It's not going to be a reality to me. And actually, Sanjay proposed to me in 2017. Again, something I never saw marriage for me, because Sanjay's always like, why can't we get married? Why can't we do this? Sanjay's a go-getter. And thank goodness I've got my go-getter, because, we've done, I never thought I'd get married, engaged, let alone this family that we've got now. And it's incredible. So, I'm thankful that the world is moving forward and changing, and there's possibility models around that show. So
we're using it now. It's getting in.
Whoever I stole that from, it's
it.
But I imagine decades ago it would have felt, well, first of all, coming out would have been problematic for a lot of people, but they would have possibly felt like that sacrifice in a way of, no, this is what I'm meant to do in life. I'm meant to meet, someone of the opposite sex. We're meant to have kids. And actually, that's why, decades later, we get older people coming out and saying, actually, this is me. And I've never, and I wonder if that always felt like a bit of a sacrifice for people.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, whereas now we know that that's not the case, especially not here.
Yeah, and definitely things are a lot better. And I think it's also important for me to say, that was something that we absolutely decided that we wanted, and something for me, I always knew I wanted children, but didn't think I could have them. And that's not the same for all LGBTQ plus people. So some people, just like some straight people, don't want children, and that's completely that's
being childless by choice. That's absolutely acceptable, and people should live their lives in the way they want to.
Exactly. So I don't want to paint a picture of being like, oh yeah, all LGBTQ plus people are just pining after this life that they thought they could never have. But certainly that was for me something that I always wanted.
Yeah. And Doug, that you were just a bit like, well,
I just really didn't believe it was a possibility for me. So once it actually became, we really started talking about it seriously on our honeymoon, which was at the start of 2020, like just by the skin of our teeth. But we started talking and, exploring possibilities for us of how we would make this family, and, different avenues that might work for us. And we came up with what we thought was surrogacy for us was the best option after having looked at every avenue. And actually, once I realized it was a reality and it was possible, it then became, wow, then I really, really wanted it, but I'd never even factored in that it was possible for me. So thank you.
Yeah. So January 2020, talk me through it. At that point, you're on honeymoon then, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're on honeymoon in 2020?
Yeah.
And you have, how did this conversation go? And then what was the next point of, what do you do from that point?
Well, we were in Sri Lanka, which was stunning, but getting from place to place, we were in a car for like long periods of time. So, I mean, I can talk forever. So Sanjay's about anything. So Sanjay's like, oh, here we go.
I have half an hour to like watch a movie.
Yeah, it's like, I'm like, I've got a lot to say. I'm getting in the car, like closing the door, like, right, here we go.
With an agenda.
Yeah. So we couldn't get away from me. So then we just started, really talking about it. And I think once we started Googling it, and then it just became, we then had to make the decision when we got back, is because of, the pandemic and what we didn't know was coming, but what was coming, whether it was the right time to start this journey, because we realize now it's quite lengthy.
Yeah, and we looked at all the different options that are available, and there's quite a wide variety of different things that you might choose to do as an LGBTQ plus person, and for like two men that's slightly different to, for example, if it was two women. But like the main ones that people often look at are things like adoption, surrogacy, be that in the UK or somewhere else, and we obviously did ours in America. And there's other journeys, for example, things like co-parenting, and a number of different permutations of the different ways that people might have family. And we thought about it quite long and hard. And I think if we're honest, like we decided to go with surrogacy because we did feel that we wanted to have a biological link to our children. It's even weird saying, like, even me saying this now, I almost feel a bit guilty for having to saying that I wanted to have a biological link to my children, because I think a lot of the time, I don't know, it's
being an only child for you as well, you'd really wanted, that, I don't know the right,
that genetic link, and so it's weird because like I said, I don't feel like you're almost allowed to admit that, but that was why we decided to go with surrogacy.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I think we have to be able to talk about our experiences and our wants and desires without that edge of, I'm going to offend someone, because actually all you're talking about is your experience.
Yes.
You're not putting any judgment or anything on anyone else's experiences. All we can do is share what we think and feel.
Yes. And I think a lot of the time people say to, we've had it said to us, and people say to LGBTQ plus couples who have their children in that way, oh, why didn't you just adopt, just in inverted commas, as if that's like the most straightforward, simple process in the world that, isn't really challenging for people going through that process and can be a very lengthy process. And B, as if that should be the default position that LGBT people go to. And actually, it's as with everyone, it's, I guess, you're right to think through the different options that are available to you and which is the one that you want to go down. So we decided that surrogacy was the route that we wanted to kind of pursue. And then there's a couple of different options. So obviously UK, the law around surrogacy isn't quite as progressed as it is, for example, in the USA. So you still have to have, basically the way that the UK law sees things is that if you have a baby through surrogacy, the surrogate, and if she is married, her husband are the legal parents of that child when it's born, and then you have to go through a process which takes about 6 months to get a parental order, which then has you on as the kind of intended parents on the birth certificate, which obviously carries risk for both the surrogate and the intended parents. And again, I should say that loads of people have really positive experiences of going through the surrogacy process in the UK. But also because of the fact that there's less infrastructure around it, because of the legal process, it means that you've got it's harder to kind of match with a surrogate, and there's a kind of a lot more that it can be a lot more challenging. Whereas in the USA, because of the legal infrastructure, it means that when the baby's born, we were on Ari's birth certificate from the day she was born, so legally recognised in the USA in that way. Although we still then had to go through the same process in the UK, but we at least had that recognised in the USA. And then because there's kind of more of an infrastructure, there's agencies who can kind of support you through the process in a more detailed way than maybe you can in the UK.
And did you meet Amber before you sorted out the egg donor, or was it the egg donor then?
Egg donor first.
Egg donor first. So we matched with the egg donor, and we kind of had a chat with her over FaceTime as well.
You talk to her as well.
Yeah,
that's
that's slightly different to the UK actually, because I think in the UK you would only get a description, whereas you can choose.
You can be anonymous though.
You can't be anonymous in the US.
The egg donor specifically wanted to be known because she just said all she wanted to do was meet us in person, feel like she was doing. It was a connection, doing the right thing, and then she was happy with that part of the process, which was lovely for us as well. Because now we have maintained a relationship with her, not as much as with Amber,
but we keep in touch with her. We keep to take our kids to meet her, and so that because I think we'd like them to be able to meet her and kind of have that know that journey as well. So yeah, we
and that's the thing, isn't it? It's not necessarily having that person in their life as a figure, but kind of that who you are, where you come from, your journey, your being,
because they will ask the questions eventually. It's not
one day they're going to go come back to school.
Hold on a minute. I've just done sex ed. What's going on?
This isn't seems to what happening here. Yeah, I think that was important for us as well. We were really thrilled to have met her again because of the pandemic. We had actually hoped to meet her when we were in the US before Ari was born, but unfortunately, COVID put an end to that.
Yeah, but we'd matched with her, and then we realised that during this pandemic, a lot of things can be done remotely. There's one thing that can't be done remotely, which is when we had to pop to the clinic to drop off our DNA.
We never know how to say that bit, and it's like you can't say sperm. You can say it.
Ejaculate in a cup for them. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you said it. Okay, that's fine.
But because it was the middle of the pandemic and there was the travel ban on, and our clinic was in Connecticut in the US. There was like a brief period.
And I was like, it's fine. I'm a flight attendant. We'll be able to just go everywhere and just do this. But obviously we didn't factor in the COVID wasn't there then. So that obviously put a stop to that.
Because we thought that, we'd be able to just pop along and throughout the process, but actually.
Nice little holiday while you do it.
Yeah, exactly. and that was not the case. And there was a brief lifting of the travel ban in the UK, but you still couldn't fly into the US unless you'd been outside of the Schengen zone for 14 days. So I did this cross reference between where you could fly out.
I'm like, Sanjay, how are we going to get there? You need to look at this.
Make it happen.
I'm like. So I got my spreadsheet out. I'm like, right, where can we fly out of and where can go into the US? And so we settled on Istanbul. And so we flew to Istanbul for 14 days. And then from Istanbul, we're then able to go into the US to visit the clinic. But although we weren't even allowed
in the clinic
to do everything. So we were in like a hotel across the road.
with given a little blue sample bag and bottle. Then had to dash across with it to give it over.
And then this was before testing. So the only way they were really checking you was by taking your temperature. And so they took Doug's temperature before he went in, and they were like,
shame me.
They were like, oh, you're a bit hot. You're a bit hot. And I was like, yeah.
Yeah. You do know what I've just been doing.
Trying to get the best sample I could.
That's brilliant.
and then they made the embryos there, and then actually when we were on our way back, so we were in New York, about to head for our flight, and that's when we got the emails to say we had a potential match with Amber, and so we had the call when we got back.
And we put on having known Amber now, it's like she's the coolest person ever. We put like shirts on, and we were like,
we had like a light shining in our face,
like as wholesome, as lovely as possible here. We're like, she was just so chilled. Her dog was running around, her little baby, her husband, and then we're like, oh, she's amazing. We can relax now. Like
it must be a big thing though, wanting her to like you.
Yeah,
because,
definitely.
The power was in her hands in many ways in terms of that matching.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of like, it felt like not like a job interview because it wasn't an interview, but you obviously just want to, it's something you want so much.
Yeah.
But also I think I guess my biggest piece of advice as well, like we ended up, like it was such a good match for us and we got on with her so well. But actually, I think what's important is that not to let your kind of want for that process to cloud like how well you are matching with someone, because we've heard of, situations where people maybe didn't have quite as good a match and therefore that has created more challenges along the way. And also, there have been challenges throughout the process which require quite open and frank conversations, particularly when you're in completely different countries.
Yeah, we've had a couple of differences between the health guidelines in the US and the NHS guidelines. So they're just simple conversations, but we've had a bit of blue cheesegate.
Yeah.
We did buy the biggest hamper of blue cheese.
Without just there shoving the blue cheese in.
They're like in America, because a lot of the blue cheese is pasteurized, it's actually... That guidelines are, as long as it's pasteurized, it's fine.
Should be happy to laugh about this too.
Yeah.
But like, there was all conversations about blue cheese, okay, and it's just these random things that you just think you're never going to have a conversation about.
Exactly.
But I think that is a tricky thing as dads anyway, because it's happening. You've got the female is growing the baby, their body's doing, and I think it's so hard for my husband to kind of, trust me on that, or to know what's going on, and obviously your baby was growing the other side of the world, and how did you find ways to stay connected with that?
Well, we spoke every Sunday. We spoke for an hour every single week. So we had a Zoom chat or more. Like often it was a couple of hours.
It started off as that's what we were doing, but by the end we'd chat for ages, and it was just the norm for us. But it was lockdown as well, so it was great time to really bond. Even though it was like this, we also had never done the experience before, so we knew no better or no different. Sorry, so it's just how we bonded, wasn't it?
Yeah, just weekly conversations.
I'd managed to see Amber. Really, fortunately, did get there for the embryo transfer, even though I wasn't allowed. Because I was working, I flew there. But even though I wasn't allowed in the embryo transfer, I actually got to meet her in person. Sanjay was like, "Do not go near her. We can't give anyone." So
she might change her mind if she meets you.
We met at a distance with masks on. I was like, through a mask, and then we had to go back to the hotel. We all joined via Zoom the embryo transfer, and then just to even have. I think it was only 20 minutes I saw her in person, because we were like, Sanjay, do not go near her. And because as much as we wanted to hug each other, we knew we couldn't. But just her to meet me in person, I thought, well, we thought Sanjay couldn't get there, but just to thank her in person for what she's doing for us was just a really important thing for us to do, because it didn't almost feel real. All this was happening over Zoom and in a different country, but there was an embryo being planted.
And it's amazing that you could both see that as well.
They'd set up process in place. Yeah, they'd changed it because of COVID basically. So it was, but we still felt very much part of it all. We had our t-shirts with pineapples on, but in different, sticky thoughts, and we were doing all the things that people do, but just remotely, I guess. And then I'd managed to get over as well at 6 months. On another flight, and got to see the bump and all that. But Sanjay didn't actually meet Amber in person until
she was 36 weeks pregnant when we went over for the
we got exemption visas to get into the US.
Yeah, and that was the first time I ever met her, was like in person. Was
you couldn't even squeeze her hardly.
Yeah, she was that. I booked into a hotel and she came and met us, and then we stayed. We then spent 3 weeks in. She has this really like big camper van in her garden, and me and Doug went, and before the birth went and stayed in that. And
well, we got a phone call to say she was 5 centimeters dilated and 80% of face. So they said the baby might be here tomorrow or in 2 weeks. So I was working and Sanjay was at home. Sanjay just bolted, got on a flight and went. Yeah. But then we basically stared at Amber for 2 weeks straight. And once I turned up the next day and we're like, any feelings? Anything happening? but then actually in the end, Ari was induced. But it was nice that we were there. I think getting to witness the birth in person was such a moment. Amber was just incredible. We had to change some bits towards the end so her husband could be in the room supporting her.
We were both there.
Sandra's holding Amber's hand. I was, for the first time,
is that
speechless.
all set up? Is that something that you discuss from the get-go?
She had a birth plan.
Yeah, we need to kind of talk about like what our hopes are for the birth, what her hopes are for the birth, and kind of work out what best way. And because of COVID, there was a bit more of a challenge, like with everyone, right? About who was allowed in the delivery room. And we ended up actually changing hospitals because one hospital would allow us to be there, one wouldn't. But yeah, so we were both. I think there were quite a lot of doctors and nurses in the room in the end at the birth. I think because they were just like, what the hell is going on here?
What's the situation?
Well, what roles did you both take? And how
well, I said I was mute for the first time in my entire life. I was just like, literally, and then we'd already planned it actually. Because we were so lucky, our birth plan did go to plan. I cut the umbilical cord, which was amazing, and Sanj had his Amber bought us t-shirts, that
with a Velcro that like opened up.
Aria went straight to Sanj and skin on skin. And it was just, a moment you're never going to forget. And it was so special.
What was it like when you got back to the UK? How was that? Because obviously you've got your own little bubble, but now you're bringing her into your home that, that's where she's going to be.
I actually said to Sanjay, I'm quite happy to stay in South Carolina, to be honest.
Really?
We'd got our groove, we knew what was going on. And I don't think, and the people are banging on your door and it's lovely to see everyone, but we did have a real stint, didn't we, of almost 2 a day coming in. But we realised now, we said, if we went around someone's house pre-baby, like if I was going at 1, I was staying all day in my head, Whereas people actually are really good. They come for an hour, 2 hours, and they go. And it's so amazing to see everyone. And it was full on for a bit, but it was amazing.
But then I am quite neurotic. So like I'm then sort of Aria's hooked up to about 17 different monitors, like measuring her like heart rate and like when she's sleeping to make sure that she's okay. And like
you'll have to take it off at some point.
I'm like when she's 18,
baby.
That's got to be interesting how you two approach things in a different way, in different ways, like your mums would. It shows how much their attitudes towards parenting is rubbed off on you.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's funny because we do work together somehow as a team. Yeah.
And obviously you've kept traveling, and I think that is I think it's one of the things I really it's not one of the, I love following you guys, but also seeing the adventures that you go on are so inspiring as a parent. But also you travel to places and you make it accessible to people who might be worried about a variety of different things traveling with children.
We do our best. Like I think it's definitely something that we don't do as much as we used to. And but we did go, for example, to Florida with
we booked the tickets though before we realised
when
questions of having a baby.
So we're like, I was like,
is this going to be okay?
With our other friends who had a baby just after us, a few days. So we had like 2, like maybe 10-month-old, not even that.
No, they were
like
6 months.
6-month-olds. But actually going on, particularly when you go, you worry about things like the time differences, but we just kept them on that same routine of like, by the time we got there and it was the evening, we just put them to bed at the same time as if it was that time. And
we thought we'd find the ultimate hack taking them to Greece. We were like, we'll just live our best life, but 2 hours backwards. So we thought we were out for drinks at 9, which is really 7 o'clock at home. And we're like dashing back and then putting her to bed. So actually we were like, we stayed out till 9 o'clock tonight, but really it was only 7 and that was her bedtime. But we just literally didn't differ from the routine. But in the last couple of weeks, Aria's routine's gone.
Oh yeah.
So she suddenly decided, I'm not sleeping anymore, guys.
No.
See ya.
And how has that been, guys? You're still smiling, but is it hysterical after there?
she's stopped. She's suddenly now napping in the pram. You say the word bed to her now, and we've got a situation.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's. Do you know it hit when, you know, my mum's telling me she's read something about it. I thought you might have done. But but when I actually went back to work, which was only a couple of months ago, like, I don't know if she noticed I wasn't there or because after night stop, but she suddenly, it's like she will go to sleep, but you have to be with her, which we'd never done before. We put her down and left the room, and she's self-settled and gone to bed. Now she wants, it is sort of cute, isn't it?
It is cute, because all of a sudden she's like, she wants to hold your hand.
It's not really sustainable.
But I mean, mine are now almost 9, so 8, 7, and 4, and we are still in the room when they go to sleep. Yeah, because they're not always going to want it.
Yeah,
it's true. Because we did attempt last night, which I've never done before, and I had my 2 brothers here and their kids to go out for a meal. Granny said she'll just sleep in the pram. I'm like, oh God, I'm not sure about this. Yeah, it was quite disastrous. My brothers are saying, I'm like, oh God, you're not so chilled, Doug, are you now? So yeah, she dashed. I thought I was so cool and chilled, but obviously not.
Let's talk about the next part of your parenting journey.
Yeah.
Because I've got to say, a few weeks ago, I absolutely yelped at my phone when I saw your video, and there were tears. So you've obviously got your embryos. You've got Amber. Tell us what's happening now.
Well, we always planned to have 2 children, and we had the same egg donor, and we created all our embryos at the same time. And so we created embryos for Doug, embryos for me, and we ended up with 1 embryo for one of us, 6 for the other. So we went with the 1 embryo first because we thought let's see how that goes, and it took, and that is beautiful little Aria. And then when we kind of started our second journey, we weren't sure if Amber, you know, we never expected Amber would do this again for us. Like, we couldn't in a wildest dreams think that she would be able to, and she kind of didn't look like she was going to be able to for various personal circumstances, and you know, that was completely understood. But then she came to us sort of March time last year, and said, about this time last year, and said, actually, or maybe a bit later, but yeah, I've got a window. I'd love to help you again.
She said, bless her, I mean, she's the most incredible woman. She just, because she always knew we wanted a sibling for Ari as well, she just said she felt like her journey with us wasn't quite finished yet. Amazing enough, she offered to do it again. And the process was slightly quicker this time, because a lot of the matching process, the legal side, is already done between us.
Right.
So yeah, and our embryos are already made.
Yeah. So that wasn't a kind of a restriction this time. So we went and did we got
to go in person this time.
It was amazing. So
and how did that compare?
It was amazing, wasn't it? We got to hold her hand, and we were all in the room together, and we got to see the
whole process with the embryo.
Our 1 embryo come out.
Yeah, being brought out and thawed and and then so that was amazing. We went for
1 night. We flew in and flew back out because we had to leave Aria. We didn't want to take her because of the time difference.
Yeah, for 1 day, it just felt like a long flight to go all the way there and back. So she, stay with Granny, and then
it was all.
I was so relaxed this time, right? So last time I was stressed out to the max, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Is this going to happen? What about, like, just every scenario? Second time round, so chill. I was like, okay, right. We did the same thing where we were testing. It's like, oh my God, we're pregnant again. And
we were actually, we're at a Disney event, actually, which was amazing. And Amber sent us the text. So we're watching The Little Mermaid on the screen. And I'm like, it's maybe we need a Disney name. I'm totally carried away. It was faint line because it happened at Disney, but then it was just all the same.
And like they measure the HCG levels, which is, I believe, I'm no doctor, for the pregnancy hormone, where that needs to double over time. And the 2 levels that they measured were exactly, almost, we checked back and we're like, they're exactly the same as Aria. Well, with Aria, we're like, this is looking really good. And then there was the 6 week. The 6 week ultrasound.
It's the first ultrasound you have.
And because they're quite a bit more frequent, I think, in America than they are in the UK. And so we joined this ultrasound. and I could just see something in Amber's face. And she was wearing was she wearing a mask? No,
she was wearing a mask.
I could just see something. I was like, something's up. All right. She said, there is something up. But I was like, it's not bad, but there's something up. And she went, I hope you're sitting down. And then she turned the camera onto the screen and
he wrote, "Hi, Dad," and then said,
"Baby A, baby B, surprise."
And 2 heartbeats.
2 heartbeats, and obviously we know that we only transferred one embryo.
Yeah.
So identical twins, which is
my
incredible.
Gosh. I mean, how did that news sink in? Has it sunk in yet?
Kind of. It was just the shock. We were just shocked.
There was a lot of nervous laughing, and then there was obviously we're then like, is Amber are you okay? She was like, I don't know how to feel either. But we've just all decided that it's how it's
meant to be.
This is the journey that we've gone
And am
on.
I right in thinking that is it non-identical twins running the family? No,
I don't think
not in your family, but generally, is that the way that works?
So. I think with identical twins, I believe there's a slightly higher instance of it with IVF, where because obviously the embryo has split, and you just don't think that when you're transferring
one embryo
and it's like a day 5 embryo that's going to happen, and that was actually so the first journey, one of the things I was like, oh my god, what if like the embryo splits and it's twins, and then the second time around I was like completely blasé.
It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen, whatever. And then so it's just.
I did say to Sanjay, they look very similar on the scan. He's like, "Have you taken them in?" The profile is remarkably similar.
We're just so excited. It never in our wildest dreams did we think that we were going to. I mean, I didn't think I was going to have 1 child, let alone 3.
3.
And you've got 3, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got 3 boys, and it is wild. It is wild. Absolutely. Are you going to find out the sex or anything?
We do know.
You do know, okay.
What we realised as well, actually, and the grannies are rubbing their hands at this, we can't even travel with a granny now because we've got 3 under 2. So they can't.
Oh my gosh.
That blew our minds too.
Yes.
They're like, you need me, don't
you? You need me to come on your holidays.
All of them.
Do you think Aria understands at all what's about to happen? And have you thought about how you're going to? I'm guessing Aria is going to go over there with you, over to the US with you.
Plus some grannies.
Yeah, plus
with some grannies, all the grannies.
So we literally, I think we're very. We recognise as well we're very fortunate to have a support system to help us in this way, because I think it would be, even
getting home, and even we're in a different state without family. It'd be tough. When the babies come.
Gosh, I imagine
Aria needs someone there too.
Most people with twins or 3 kids under 2 would be like, we are not traveling for at least 10 years. You're going to be doing it within weeks.
Well, that's what I said. I was like, I don't think we'll be going on any trips anytime soon once we're back in the UK.
You'll have to change your Instagram handle, guys.
The
non-traveling gays. There we go. So this time round, you're taking Aria, you're taking the grandmas.
And then we're gonna, obviously we're a bit more conscious of the fact that obviously with any pregnancy there can be challenges, but obviously those are kind of the likelihood of some challenges happening are increased with identical twins, and they're can I get this right? Dimo twins. So they're diamniotic monochorionic. So they've got their own amniotic. Get me with my technical terms.
Wow, look at you.
So basically, so you've got the different types of twins. So when they're non-identical, they'll often have their own placenta, own amniotic sac. Whereas with identical twins, some identical twins, and these are twins, they've got their own sacs, but they share a placenta, which is where sometimes one can end up getting more blood flow, etc. So because
they're working that placenta very hard as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to, I guess, be a bit more prepared for things like prematurity and kind of challenges along the way. So we're kind of, and it's funny how you suddenly like become Dr. Google, like with like reading up on all this stuff.
Well, so since Sanjay reads up on it all, I find people that have got identical twins on social media and then see what they're doing. So that's how we got that's our research methods.
I like that. I like it a lot. The personal approach and the more scientific.
Yeah, and then we combine it. So to kind of get the best of both worlds. Yeah, so we're just prepared for that. But I'm kind of ready to go whenever things happen. But yeah, just very, very excited and just hoping
everything goes well for Amber and everything. So yeah, Amber, I mean, we thought she was the same before. Now she's just incredible. And
yeah, she's just taking it all, in her stride, and just, you know, been amazing.
Has having Aria and your two to come, has it made you look and think about your parents differently?
Yes. Yeah. We've said, you know, you don't realize what, I mean, I look at myself when I said I came to Tenerife, I had no phones back then, and I just bolted out here. I didn't even ring home for 2 weeks, and then when I finally bothered to ring home to say, oh yeah, I'm fine actually, my mum's like, what? Like, where have you been? Now, if, like, you know, you just realize what they did for you and how you behaved, and I hope that it will definitely make me a better person, and I realize what they did for you. And I don't think I acknowledged that really before Aria, what, you know, the sacrifices, everything they've done for us.
Yeah, you definitely look back, and I look back on your life and you think, God, I was a right bugger then. You know, like, and just think, and just, I look, God, I hope my children don't behave like I did when I was a kid. But then hopefully it will give me that kind of self-reflection, gives you a different perspective when I'm sure there will be challenging parenting times to come, and hopefully just to remind yourself of that. But yeah, definitely makes you realize, it makes you see your own parents in a more forgiving way, I guess.
Even the simple things like a constant stream of nappies and being sick, and you forget that's what, I just didn't even know that's what my parents have done for me. You know, all the little things that, you know, it's constant, isn't it? Especially the first, well, we've already got this far, but it's constant. You don't realize that's what your parents did.
I remember my mum I think it was something to do with an iPhone or a gadget or something. I was like trying to teach my mum how to do something on it, and like almost was laughing at her a bit in a nice way, but, you know, in a jokey way, like laughing that she just wasn't unable to understand this technology. And she just turned to me and she went, Sanjay, I taught you how to use a spoon.
Have some patience.
And I kind of brought that all back a bit. I'm not sure I stole that. Whose anecdote I stole that from? No, that was definitely my mum. That's definitely my mum.
We end each episode of the podcast with you completing 3 sentences. The first one is, being a dad means.
The world. Being a dad means the world.
Everything.
I love that. Since having children,
as much as it pains me, listen to your parents. They do know quite well.
and I've become, I think, a less selfish person.
Nice. And finally, I'm happy when
I see Aria's face in the morning smiling back at me.
And I do bath time, and we sing the Little Mermaid part of your world every night.
Oh, guys, thank you so much. What a delightful chat. Honestly, I'm so thrilled to see this next part of your journey unfold. You are full of love, and you spread so much love. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been wonderful.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.